What I'm watching for this weekend as the Buccaneers take on the Bengals, that and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up and welcome into this live episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listener view every day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can follow along on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at @JYarcho_Bucs, credentialed member of the media covering your Tampa Bay Buccaneers as deputy editor of SB Nation's BucsNation.com. Here with you every Monday through Friday, along with the everydayers. And for that, I want to share my appreciation for your continued support of the show. One of the ways you can support the show is become a Locked On Bucs insider. You're going to get news, rumors, updates, general thoughts, one-on-one conversations with me via text message. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes to become an insider today. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. I will tell you which players I'm looking forward to seeing on Saturday, and it's time for me to get on my soapbox about a certain former Buccaneer that decided to play victim. All of that is coming up in a little bit, but let's start with what I'm looking for this weekend against the Cincinnati Bengals. For those that didn't catch it, Evan Klosky talked about what he's looking for on yesterday's WTSP Wednesday episode, so you want to make sure and go back to check that out. But here's what I'm looking for in this game. First and foremost, I want to see what kind of personnel Liam Coen is utilizing most often. Now, it may mean absolutely nothing given the vanilla style of offense in the preseason, but it's something that I want to make a point to monitor over the course of the preseason to see if we can get an idea as to what formations we may see the most during the regular season. Are we going to see three wide receiver sets 50 to 60% of the time? How often is he lining up with multiple tight ends? And what situations are those multiple tight end sets happening in? What about two receiver, two tight end? Is there a running back on every snap, or does he run some empty back sets? These things are important because if they're at all indicative of what we'll see in the regular season, it's going to give us a better idea as to which players we'll see the most likely out on the field. If we see a high percentage of three receiver sets, we know that Jalen McMillan or Trey Palmer or Sterling Shepard are going to be on the field a lot. That gives us more of an idea as to what their involvement in the offense is going to be and kind of what Cohen's bread and butter is going to be. In the same vein, I want to see what kind of run plays Coen is going to rely on. And by that, I mean situation and execution. Is it a solid mix of inside and outside runs? Is it a lot of first down runs like we saw last year? What's the ratio going to be there, and how involved are the backs going to be in the passing game? All these things are important to take note of now and keep in mind for next week and the week after. All throughout the preseason, what kind of looks are we getting in the run game? What kind of formations are we dealing with? And again, Coen isn't going to show much of his true playbook, and both teams are going to be running very basic, very vanilla offenses, considering that these games don't mean anything, and they aren't going to want to put anything on film that they plan to unleash in the regular season. This is all about tracking tendencies and seeing how they translate to the regular season. On the flip side, talking about the defense, I'm not expecting much in terms of exotic blitzes or crazy alignments. What I'm most going to be focused on is the ability for the generic pass rush to be able to win their battles and get after the quarterback, as well as how this secondary is going to be run. Evan talked about it a little bit on Wednesday, but we know now that we aren't going to see any starters on Saturday. So who is lining up where let me rephrase. Who is lining up where to get this game started? Are the safeties going to be Merriweather and Wisdom while Izien and Tykee are at corner? Or are they going to split reps at nickel while you have Bryce Hall and Tyreek Funderburk on the outside? Where is Tavier Thomas going to fit in all of this? These are a lot of versatile players vying for a limited number of spots on this roster. So I want to see where they're being tested in live game situations. It'll be somewhat telling if Izien doesn't play, because that's going to mean that he's in the lead for that nickel spot. However, if Tykee is the leader, like we believe that he is, he's still going to play because, as Bull said, all healthy rookies will play. We can talk all day about the nickel competition or the depth at safety and outside corner, but where does Todd Bowles want to see these guys line up on game day? That's also going to tell us a lot about where he sees them as the best fits in his defense come the regular season. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to put a player at a spot that you don't intend on having him play. If you want Izien and Tykee to battle it out for nickel corner, why would either of them line up on the outside or at safety? It's not fair to them to be in that spot where they don't have the opportunity to show what they can do at the position they're fighting for. And it's disingenuous to the coaching staff as well as the other players on defense to have them taking on the responsibilities and the reps of a role that they're not going to play. You want to see what they can do against the other team so that they can be properly evaluated both against that team as well as against each other. Finally, of course, I'm keeping an eye on the new kickoffs because those are going to get real interesting real fast. I want to see what kind of players the Bucs have on the kickoff team to try and stop the returner, as well as which players they have out there to block for Bucky Irving and Sean Tucker. These new rules make the kickoffs incredibly important, and these can be game-shifting plays. It's no longer a guaranteed touchback. These teams have to find ways to stop the returners, who are going to be some of the fastest and most elusive players on the opposing team, as well as find ways to give themselves big advantages in the return game. We might honestly see a record number of kickoff return touchdowns this season across the NFL, and that could sink this new rule or cause the NFL to have to adjust on the fly, because you do not want to take all of those points away from the offense. The offense is what sells tickets. The offense is what puts points up on the board. Yes, you want the kickoff to be a more exciting play, but you don't want it to steal possessions away from the offense. So it's going to be really interesting to see how the NFL tweaks this, or if I'm completely wrong and we see basically just as many kickoff returns for touchdowns as we have over the course of the last couple of years. I want to jump into the chat real quick to see what's going on in there. We got Demon Hunter, we got Fausto, we got Scotty J all in here. Scotty J says, I'm all eyes on our Rook center and watch for his audibles at the line. I will talk about players in just a little bit. Fausto says, does Tucker and Edmonds play or just Bucky? All three of those running backs, I believe, are going to play. Sean Tucker for sure. Bucky Irving for sure. I would assume Chase Edmonds is going to get some time. Rachaad White will be the guy who does not see any playing time in this game. He is the starter. No Mike Evans, no Chris Godwin, no Tristan Wirfs, no Baker Mayfield. Kyle Trask is the starting quarterback for this game. No Antoine, no Vita, no Levante, no Zion, no Jamel. Those big name guys are the ones that are going to be sitting this one out. So I fully expect to see all three of those running backs on Saturday against the Cincinnati Bengals. Scotty J in the chat again says, on defense, I'm watching the edges. We have to have power on the edge to allow a four-man rush. I 100% agree with that, which is why I'm going to be focusing a lot on the natural pass rush. The guys on the edge and then the down linemen, those are going to be critical for the Buccaneers this season, and I don't expect Todd Bowles to show too much of what he plans to do with a lot of these extra guys, the inside linebackers, the safeties, the secondary players, what he's going to do in terms of blitzing those guys. We're not going to see any of that in the preseason. Mark in the chat says opponents will be watching, so nothing on film. Exactly. 100%, Mark. You hit the nail on the head with that one. There are some key players that I cannot wait to see take the field. That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You're hiring for your small business. You want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users do not visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is also constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even launched a new feature that helps you write job descriptions, which makes the process even easier and quicker. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen or view today. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast. Get daily insight to the best fantasy draft strategies so you can win your league this season. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I say it every year, and I'll probably say it at least 2 more times this week, but there are certain things and certain players that you need to watch for in the preseason, and that's what we're breaking down here. We've talked about the what. Let's talk about the who. Knowing the starters aren't playing, who are the players I'm going to be hyper-focused on against the Bengals? Spoiler alert, it's almost all rookies. First and foremost, it's Graham Barton. Even if he's lined up against the second stringers, how does he look switching to center at this level compared to playing left tackle at Duke? Are the snaps crisp and on target? Is he imposing his will against the defense? Is he making checks? Is he making calls? Even against the second teamers, it doesn't give you a full idea as to how he'll look against a team's starting defensive line. But depending on how dominant he looks, it could be rather telling where he is compared to the rest of the NFL landscape. It's just going to be a nice barometer to see him each week of the preseason and evaluate if he's getting better, with what mistakes is he making, and are those getting corrected for the next game? All these incredibly important things that are going to play out in the regular season. And that's really the message of this episode is let's start with this game and let's continue to compare week to week to week through the preseason. Alignments, formations, where players are lined up, and then, of course, rookie mistakes, and do they get corrected? Sticking with the offense, I do have 2 more players. Of course, I want to see how Jalen McMillan does. More importantly, I really hope that the Bengals are playing their starting corners because I want to see how he does against them. He's passed each test so far. He looked great early in camp. Then he looked great again when the full pads and the contact kicked in. But how does he look against another team? If McMillan is going to be as big a part of this offense as I believe he will, he needs to dominate on Saturday. Win those contested catches, find the soft spots in the zone, beat his guy at the line of scrimmage and get open. I'm also going to keep an eye on what kind of routes Coen wants him to run? Is it going to be a big variety of the route tree, or is he going to be the guy that's basically running goes and out routes, or is he doing the slants and the posts? What kind of usage is he going to have when he's out there, presumably with Trey Palmer, Sterling Shepard, and Raheem Jarrett? The last guy on offense is not a rookie, but kind of a redshirt rookie, and it's running back Sean Tucker. Of course, I'm excited to see what Bucky Irving can do, but to echo the sentiments of Evan on Wednesday, is Tucker closer to being the guy that the Bucs thought that they were getting last year, or is he more of what we saw last year? Is he more decisive and assertive as a runner, or is he still averaging 2 yards or less a carry and getting hit in the backfield a lot? I'm not sure that Sean Tucker is a lock for this roster. I think the Bucs want to carry 4 running backs, and perhaps special teams will be Sean Tucker's saving grace. But if that's all he can do effectively and he continues to struggle on offense, I think the Bucs are going to look for a new option, whether that's a current free agent, another undrafted rookie that they can go get, heck, maybe even someone that played for the USFL last year, or they can wait until roster cuts and pick up a guy that gets cut from another team. This preseason is incredibly important for Tucker and his future with this team. Defensively, I have to start with Tykee Smith. This guy has gotten a lot of praise and a lot of hype, whether that's from the media or from his teammates or coaches. And this will be the first time that it's truly on display. How does he do against the speed of NFL offenses? Is he missing assignments in Bulls defense, or does he look like that he has a really solid grasp on what he needs to do? Where is he lining up? Things like that. Jenna Lane, among others, have said that he appears to be the starting nickel for this team as of now. So we need to see what he can do and whether or not he can be even more of a playmaker than Izzian was last season. Next on my list is cornerback Tyreek Funderburk. He certainly has a shot at making this roster, and special teams is definitely going to play a part. But Bowles and Light have a knack for finding some of these late round or undrafted players in the secondary that fit seamlessly into Bowles' scheme. Shout out to the scouting staff that play a huge part in that as well. But with the depth at corner and safety being almost interchangeable with a lot of these players, the Bucs are probably looking for a true corner in case Zion or Dean go down, while not stripping their depth at safety or at nickel corner. Bryce Hall, obviously, next man up at outside corner if injury happens to Jamel or Zion. But beyond that, you're talking about primarily slot and hybrid players. Funderburk can gain some ground if he not only performs well at corner, but also shines on special teams. It was something that he spoke with the media about after practice on Thursday. Those last few roster spots are always going to come down to whether or not players can participate on kick and punt teams and can be effective on those units. Finally, I want to see Chris Braswell's first game action. With edge being as thin as it is, Braswell needs to be a factor this season. It's well documented that he didn't get a ton of playing time at Alabama. So how is that going to factor into who he is at the NFL level? Is this a situation where starting with nearly a fresh slate is beneficial to this coaching staff in the development of a player, or was his growth stunted by staying at a place where he didn't get as much playing time as he could have had he transferred to another program? We know we aren't going to see Yaya Diaby at all this preseason, and I assume, based on Bowles' words, that Joe Tryon-Shoyinka won't be playing. So we should see a lot of Braswell Saturday. My guess would be it'll be Anthony Nelson and Chris Braswell as your starting edge rushers. Again, I haven't seen which Bengals starters are playing, but I know it was announced earlier in the week that some of them will be. So much like how I hope Jalen McMillan gets the opportunity to go against some of their starting corners, I want Braswell to have to go against some of Cincinnati's starting offensive linemen. It's going to show one of two things. Either he finishes the game knowing what his shortcomings are and where he really needs to focus his work over the course of the next week because he's struggling with something, or he's able to win some of those reps and build some confidence heading into preseason week 2. Either way, it's going to be good for him and what the Bucs need him to be. Going to jump into the chat again real quick. We have Gary in the chat says, I bet they play Joe Burrow for one drive. I can absolutely see that, and depending on how that drive goes, we might see Burrow for a second possession. If the Bengals offense goes 3 and out, I could see Burrow going back out there. Maybe they have 6 to 8 scripted plays that they really want to see from Joe Burrow and the ones on Saturday. So if it's a 3 and out situation, they might send Joe and the ones back out there for another possession. We have Demon Hunter says, I look forward to watching Chris Braswell. That's another big one. Tony in the chat says, will Elijah Klein step up and earn a spot on the roster? He knows he has a good chance with Sua out of the mix. He's certainly going to get lots of opportunity and lots of snaps on Saturday. And he's another guy that I'm looking forward to really keeping an eye on to see how he does. A lot of these day 3 offensive linemen that we've seen the Buccaneers draft over the course of the last couple of years, it usually takes them a little while to get acclimated. So I don't know if Elijah is even going to be in the running for that starting job, if he's going to push Ben Bredesen at all, or if they're just looking for him to continue to develop, work in practice, and come along throughout the season as a reliable depth piece. Let me know in the comments other players that you are looking forward to watching, but I have some grievances to air. That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace in Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. If you want to catch an upcoming Rays game, tickets when they host the Orioles start at $30. Against the Astros, you can get tickets as low as $14, and then tickets against the Diamondbacks start at $24. Right now, you can get Buccaneers regular season tickets as low as $49, and tickets for week 1 against the Commanders start at just $67. And all of those prices that I just rattled off feature Game Time's all-in pricing, so you're not going to be surprised when you get to checkout. You can wait until the last minute when prices drop by as much as 60%, or buy them now knowing you have Game Time's lowest price guarantee. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Wrapping things up here on a live edition of the Locked On Bucs podcast. Love seeing everybody in the chat. You guys are the best. But you know what? Enough is enough. Okay? I didn't want to have to do this. But at the same time, I can't let it go without comment. As many of you know, maybe some of you saw it, Devin White was on The Pivot, hosted by Ryan Clark, and he talked about where things went wrong with the Bucs. Clark pointed out his incredible run in the 2020 postseason, then brought up his being benched last year, which then led to Clark bringing up the fact that the Bucs didn't re-sign him. Devin White, as you'd expect, played the victim and talked about how the Bucs didn't keep their promise and said that there were mishandled situations. He said he put together a great resume and had some of the best 4 years anyone could. Talked about how Bulls told him that he was going to get taken care of after that 4th season. He also talked about his admiration and love for Antonio Brown and how close they were. That should come as a surprise to no one. Basically, what it boiled down to was Devin throwing a pity party for himself and blaming the Bucs for him not coming back. All right. Here's the thing. Devin White stopped trying after the 2020 postseason. He thought that playoff run was going to carry him to a $100 million contract. His ego went completely out of control, and he thought that he was the superstar of the team. Even a team that still had Tom Brady, that had Mike Evans, at that point still had Antonio Brown and Gronk, had Levante David right next to him. Mind you, he still couldn't cover running backs out of the backfield. He still over-pursued ball carriers. He still missed tackles, but he was a playmaker. So some of those things could be forgiven or overlooked or just accepted. He brought sacks. He brought takeaways. He brought energy. Then came the trade request, probably because the Bucs told him that they wanted him to play on the fifth-year option instead of extending him beforehand. So he got in his feels and he threw a little temper tantrum. Whatever, that passed. Devin shows up to training camp. He gets chosen to be a captain, and he absolutely balled out against the Minnesota Vikings in week 1. All right. So a lot of us thought he got the message. He understands now. He knows that he has to step his game up, that he's got to be 2020 postseason Devin all year long. And then he's going to get that bag from Jason Light, and he's going to be a Buck for the next 4 or 5 years. Then it all unraveled. No, I do not, under any circumstances, blame Devin White for getting hurt. He played hurt against the Eagles in a primetime game and had a huge play with an interception of Jalen Hurts. It wasn't his fault those things happened. What is his fault was the way he handled his return. It was you, Devin, that decided to make yourself a healthy scratch against the Packers because you were mad that Todd Bowles told you that Britt was starting and you were going to come in and be rotational that week. It was you, Devin, that sulked on the sideline when you became a rotational player. It was you, Devin, that would race out of the locker room and hide from the media so that you didn't have to answer any questions about your attitude. It was you that cost yourself a chance to return to the Bucs and get the money that you wanted. It certainly wasn't going to be $100 million because you didn't earn that. You didn't earn it on the field. You didn't earn it off the field. You just wanted it because you thought you deserved it. But it certainly would have been more money than what you're getting from Philadelphia. And you know what people don't get? Raises when they do below average work with a bad attitude. And that's the only way to describe your 2023 season. Below average work with a bad attitude. You can go back and watch some of the videos from practice last year when White was injured and he's walking around trying to talk to guys and they just start walking away from him. His own teammates didn't even want to deal with him anymore because he was an entitled crybaby that thought he was bigger than the collective of the team. And those players don't last. Those players aren't leaders. They aren't captains, and they aren't worth the headache that they bring. So quit playing the victim and actually learn from your mistakes for once. And then maybe you'll get the deal that you wanted in the first place. It won't be with Tampa, but maybe it'll be in Philly. Because I hate to break it to you. If you play in Philly the way you did the last 2 years in Tampa, those fans are going to eat you alive. They are some of the most loyal, diehard, rabid fans in all of sports, and they don't put up with divas. They don't put up with entitled diva crybabies. They are loyal to the name on the front, not the name on the back. So you blow coverages or miss tackles and then strut around like you're Ray Lewis and God's gift to linebacking, they are going to hate you. They are going to destroy you. And you're going to be on your third team in as many seasons because you're going to be shown the door by another franchise. hopefully, until the crossover in whatever week it is, that's the last time I have to talk about Devin White on this podcast. But you know what? You go and you make a spectacle of yourself and you point fingers at everybody but the one person responsible for the way things ended up. And I gotta say my piece. So going to jump in the chat one more time before we get out of here. BT says Devin said his leg was hurting bad that season. If that's the case, own up and say, you know what? I can't play. But when you come out and you say, all right, I'm good to go, you practice all week, and then you're told that you're going to be a rotational player and they ease you back in and Britt's going to get the start, and you say, well, in that case, I'm not playing. Hit the bricks, dude. I'm over it. I'm done. Destined for Greatness says White seemed to have a grudge against the Glazers and Light. A lot of finger pointing. Yeah, he wanted his extension. They wanted him to prove it on the 5th-year option. And this was the result of all of that. BT also says, love my Bucs. Hey, we all love the Bucs. I love covering the Bucs. I love interacting with each and every one of you in these live chats. I love doing this 5 days a week for each and every one of you. That is going to do it for this episode. Make sure you come back tomorrow. I will be joined by none other than Rock Riley of the Rock Stops Here podcast. He's been on the Bucs beat forever. So excited to have Rock join me on the show. Going to talk about some of his biggest takeaways and surprises so far through training camp, and then see what he might have his eye on this weekend. You don't want to miss that. In the meantime, check out everything going on over at BucsNation.com. Make sure you're following on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at @JYarcho_Bucs. Follow on your favorite podcast platform of choice, or on YouTube with those notifications turned on. And of course, you can become a Locked On Bucs insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. I want to thank you so much for joining me right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.